Now we are. Now call the meeting to order. Can you do a roll call?
Yes, and committee member Wall.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Simon.
Here.
Thank you. Committee member Lang. Here. Thank you. Committee member Burtis.
Here.
Where's here? New York.
New York.
Not here, doesn't it?
Oh, it is. I didn't read that.
Committee member Alden.
Here.
Thank you. Vice Chair Lewis. Here. Thank you. And Chair Johnson.
Here.
Great. That's okay.
Under 12, it's like flag. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
I'll get that straight, yeah. It's getting comical.
I'm not even standing next to you. We're not even filming.
Do we have any open time items?
Sure. May I do a very brief introduction, but I'm very happy to introduce to you Bernie Zabe, our new building official who was hired, started April 1st, I believe, from the very beginning of April, but Bernie comes with a tremendous amount of experience working for a variety of jurisdictions, teaches you can totally forget the Diablo Valley College, and just is a great person besides all that, with all their experience, and we're just been really excited. We were recruited him for a long time. He was part of our organization as a contract support and staff, but anyways, it's been a long time coming, and we're just happy to have Bernie here. So it's great for all of you to meet him and ask him all the questions I know you all have about the building code and things we might be able to think of going forward. So.
And thank you for that, Adam. And thank you for allowing me to be here. And technically, I've been here since June of last year, but officially since April Fool's Day.
Yeah.
No joke, no pun intended. So I'm now able to fully immerse myself here as opposed to a third party part-time. I was serving 3 other jurisdictions along with here, so I was spread out pretty thin. So I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be able to contribute and be a part of the solutions and solutions for all the good and solutions for all. So I will end there, and I look forward to your questions. I look forward, I may not have all of your answers, but I know where to find them and I know how to develop them. So some of the answers are very unique, as you know. We have to be creative sometimes, and I can be very creative within the law. So I will end my speech there. And thank you very much.
Well, welcome aboard. It's just, so it's just an introductory, is that? Okay.
Yeah, well, it's a relevant topic.
And will be joining us for the code topic.
I will.
Okay.
So I'll be here for the duration of, and this is for here, this is my first Climate Action Committee meeting for the town of Corte Madera. So take it easy on me.
Okay, well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
It's definitely welcome. You know, it's such an integral part of getting anything done is that collaboration among staff and having strong people. So we're happy that you're formally here. A quick question though, if you're teaching at Diablo Valley, do you live across the bay or do you live here or?
I do not live here.
Part of the challenge.
So I live in American Canyon, so
Okay.
it's only 36 miles, but it's a 2-hour drive.
It's a long 36 miles.
It's a 2-hour drive. So,
wow, that's
and
hard.
then I go to Diablo Valley. I teach 3 nights a week, and So it's been challenging, but rewarding and just a little bit more. I'm a B general contractor. I had a company down in LA. I built in Beverly Hills previously in my other lifetime ago, for 17 years. I'm a licensed B general, C5 framer, C6, C10 electrician. An ICC member. I hold the highest designation from ICC. I've been around, but there's more to do, and I haven't seen it all. And again, that's.
I think having someone who has been in the trades is going to be a huge help, and, you know, bringing architects and contractors together with property owners and
I'm a
making it work.
mechanical engineer, so I teach architectural engineering and structural engineering at DVC too. So I get it, I understand it, and I understand some of
The challenge.
I get it. And I look forward to the challenges. That's what makes it fun and exciting. You know, it gets boring if it's not challenging. So yeah, that's a little bit about what I do, a very small part.
Well, welcome aboard. We can talk to you about heat pumps, but a hot topic here. So should we move on? Does anybody have any comments on the meeting minutes? Any worthy of discussion? Seems like it was a long time ago. Okay, could I get a move to approve? Do
I will move to approve as written.
I have a second? I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's approved. General business. Item A is a recommendation to city council on specific language for the reach code for Corte Madera. It was fun to go through this. And I was thinking, thank goodness you put the explanation for us in there. So thank you very much for doing that. So I've been anxious to, I thought you'd have a couple slides put together since.
Yes, so I have a couple slides just to go through a summary of the staff report and a reminder of how we got to where we are today. And as Dave said, the item here is discussion and potential recommendation of town council on these renovation reach codes. So this committee is well aware of the background. This has been a multi-year
Can you
process.
move? Is that board or Seth? Adam, is this really our last meeting in this room?
Yes, I was
So excited.
We're just doing our punch list today through this, so yeah. This may not look that way today, but we'll have a lot of work to do. Yes, it is. Okay, so very excited.
That's why we only have one screen here.
Yeah.
Things are already starting to move over to the new building. Yeah, so this, going back to 2022 is sort of the first time this committee started having discussions about these reach codes. So in 2022, the Monroe County Sustainability Team developed 3 model reach codes. And that was the all electric new construction, the energy reach code for single family renovations and enhanced EV charging requirements. And the county did a year-long engagement process to develop those codes. They had working groups with building officials, contractors, planners, presentations to this committee as shown on the timeline, an online survey, really extensive outreach process to develop these codes. And that led to, in the fall of 2022, as part of the 2022 triennial code adoption process, the town council adopted the new construction components of those model reach codes along with the base code. And at that time, the council asked staff to do additional analysis and community engagement around the renovation reach codes. And that's a process that we picked up in spring of 2023. We had a community workshop, we had a survey. We advertised it by sending out a mailer to all residents in town, advertising the workshop. We had materials in the newsletter, social media. So really trying to get the community's eyes on these codes at that point. And then, as the committee is aware, the project was put on hold following the April ruling in California Restaurant Association versus City of Berkeley case. There was some uncertainty after the April ruling whether it was going to stand or not, and we heard in January of this year that it was indeed standing, and that while unfortunate, did provide some clarity on which codes we can move forward with. So that's how we got to today. And this is the 6th Climate Action Committee meeting where we've been discussing these codes, and we feel confident that the ones we're proposing to move forward with now are feasible. So those 2 codes are the energy reach code for single family building renovations of 750 square feet or more, and additional electric vehicle charging requirements for certain renovation projects. These 2 are substantially the same as the ones that the committee reviewed last year with a few modifications, which I'll go over. And as noted in the staff report, we're no longer moving forward with those 2 other codes that were under discussion last year. So first reach code is that single family renovations reach code, which applies to remodels and additions of 750 square feet or more. There's mandatory measures, and then there's a target energy savings score that each project has to meet. And I'll go over those in more detail, but the exemptions to the code are for newer buildings. So those buildings built on or after January 1 of 2011, those buildings are built to newer code standards, so they're a lot more energy efficient already. If it's already an all-electric construction, it's exempt. And then for low-income residents who are enrolled in PG&E's CARE or HERO programs, those residents can comply just by installing 2 simple measures. So these are the mandatory measures. A lighting measure, which is replacing lamps with LEDs, and then installing photocell controls on exterior lights so they automatically turn off during the day. And then for projects that include a kitchen or a laundry remodel or a service panel upgrade as already part of the existing scope of the project, they'd be required to install electric readiness measures, which are essentially making sure there's the wiring and the panel capacity to install electric appliances in the future. In addition to those mandatory measures, the county's, this reach code and the county's reach code requires single family renovations to meet a target energy score by choosing from a menu of energy efficiency and electrification measures. This is the county's flexible compliance table, which includes both climate zones in Marin, but most of Corte Madera is in climate zone 3. There's only a very tiny sliver in climate zone 2. So staff are proposing to use the score and measures values for climate zone 3 for all of Corte Madera to make compliance simpler. So that's one change from the county's model code. Another change is that this is the table staff are proposing to use for Corte Madera with 3 building vintages instead of 1 score and measure values for every home vintage. And this is how the statewide reach code team developed this model reach code. That's what the county based their code off of. And the reason is that these 3 building vintages correspond with different time periods in the state's energy code. So these are homes that have very different starting points in terms of energy efficiency. And by expanding vintages in this way, there's actually more measures that homeowners can choose from. So if you look at the wall insulation or the raised floor insulation measures, those are excluded from the county's code because they're not cost effective in the newest vintage. And by condensing to just the newest vintage, the county had to take those measures off. So Staff are proposing to expand the vintages to increase compliance options and to incentivize these weatherization changes, which are really result in a lot more energy savings in older vintages. But if we're not giving them credit for those savings, there's not much of an incentive for homeowners to make those changes. Another reason to expand the vintages is we know most of our housing stock in Corte Madera is built before 1979. So that's really where most of our homes are, and needing those changes. There is a clause in the code that the chief building official can reclassify the vintage of the house if, for example, it's undergone a really extensive remodel and it's actually more similar to a newer building. It could be reclassified into one of these other categories. And the goal overall with this flexible compliance table is to let the homeowner decide which of these measures makes the most sense for their home, for their project. That's where the flexible comes from. It's really meant to be for homeowners to choose what makes the most sense for their project. So just quickly to look at some example projects. This is a project that got up to 736 square feet. And this is using the same calculation for renovated space that the fire department uses when they're making their calculations for whether fire sprinklers are required. So 750 square feet is the sum of all areas added or modified. In this case, there's two rooms being added, so the full square footage of those two rooms. And then there's a couple walls being removed in the kitchen and dining areas. So those rooms are considered modified by the wall removal, and that area is counted. So this example doesn't quite make it up to the 750 square threshold, but it's getting close. And then on the other hand, this is a project that goes far beyond that 750, over 1,000 square foot addition. And this is a building that was built in 1955. So that's really a building that would benefit from some of these additional energy saving measures. And we don't have an exact number of how many buildings would meet that 750 square foot measure, as we discussed with this committee. Our estimate is 30 or fewer projects a year. Some other jurisdictions have modified that threshold, but with the lack of data, staff are proposing to stick with that 750, be consistent with the county, and then we have the opportunity to reevaluate this code in the future and see if we want to make changes. So the second REACH code is the electric vehicle. Ready? Yeah.
Or you want to hold for questions?
Maybe hold to the end.
Yeah,
If you can.
I've been. Yeah, let's hold.
In front of you.
Because I think there's gonna be a number of questions.
Second REACH code is the electric vehicle readiness and infrastructure innovation REACH code. So as mentioned, the town adopted the new construction components of the county's model code back in 2022. Since then, the intervening code has been released. This is typically for more minor changes. However, this year there were big changes made to the EV requirements in California Green Building Code. So these become effective on July 1st, with no action from jurisdictions needed. However, since we are proposing to make modifications to adopt the renovation components, these changes are important for us to understand. So this table is comparing the Marin County Model Code to the intervening code requirements. And the green yeses are where our code is still meeting or exceeding Cal Green, and everything else, the intervening code has gone beyond what we've adopted. Same table for non-residential. So you can see that in most cases, in a lot of cases, the intervening code has actually gone beyond. So what's in the draft ordinance is just revising the new construction EV requirements and keeping the requirements where they still exceed. So for example, multifamily, that 85% EV ready, 15% chargers. we can keep that because it still goes beyond the other requirements. Are no longer in there. They're covered by the intervening code. And then the ordinance also add the renovation requirements. So these are the renovation requirements. For single family homes requires EV readiness when a service panel is upgraded. So when that's already part of the project scope, to make sure that you have the capacity and wiring to support EV charging in the future. And then for multifamily buildings and hotels and motels, there's also a service panel modification trigger. If the service panel is modified, adding capacity for 20% of on-site parking spaces to be level 2 complete. And then the second trigger is if the parking lot surface is modified by removing paving or curbs to add raceway or conduit to at least 20% of exposed parking spaces and charging stations to at least 5% of exposed spaces. So this is a slight difference from the county's model beach code here, and that's based on feedback we received through the community outreach process. So we are not including that option at the top that's crossed out to add conduit to 50%. Only the second option remains, so 20% conduit, 5% chargers. And that is also more aligned with what the intervening code requirements are for non-residential project types. It's a similar requirement there. And for that non-residential building, and the intervening code cycle actually added these renovation requirements, which weren't present in the 2022 triennial code. So whereas the county adopted additional requirements for that project type, that's now covered in the intervening code. So that's why it's not included in the draft ordinance. And then I just wanted to go back to this engagement timeline briefly. Just as a reminder of all the engagement that was done, and we got a lot of good feedback from the community. We heard some concerns. A lot of the concerns were related to the codes that we're no longer moving forward with. So expanding the all electric new construction requirement, preventing the expansion of natural gas infrastructure. So those are no longer on the table. However, one of the concerns that's come up multiple times and just wanted to briefly address with these remaining codes is around the cost of these requirements. And it's difficult to put an exact number because every building is different, and especially for the flexible compliance path, depending on which measures the homeowner selects, the cost could be very different. However, in general, the costs are a pretty small percentage of the overall project cost because these are big projects. So this is some analysis that was completed by the statewide reach code team. And even for projects that are going way above the required score, so this efficiency plus heat pump water heater, for example, which got 17 points, which is way above what the code requires, that's still less than 5% of the overall project cost. And this code is also required by the state to be cost effective over the lifetime of the measures. That's a requirement for any modifications to the energy code. Next steps for this ordinance still needs final legal and staff review. It would tentatively go to town council at the second meeting in June for its first reading. And it would go into effect 30 days after the second reading, except that the energy use code needs to go to the CEC, the California Energy Commission, for approval before being enforced. And then we're already halfway through the code cycle right now. And so in 18 or so short months, we'll be beginning to prepare to adopt the 2025 building code. And that will be a great opportunity to see how this REACH code is working in our community, address any issues that have come up, and decide if we want to make any changes. there's been a couple suggestions. I had a good conversation with Pat and Karen a couple weeks ago about this code. And some of their suggestions were asking the state rate reach code team if we could research lower cost options that could be added to that menu. So for example, instant hot water heaters, Pat brought up, considering expanding the ordinance to smaller renovations. I know that's been brought up a couple times, potentially with a reduced target score, researching grants that might be available to help low-income residents who right now are exempted from many of the requirements, and see if there's a way to help them comply with more of them. So those are some of the topics and modifications that we can research and consider for the next code cycle. And then finally, I know this committee is very familiar with the reasons for adopting these codes, but just wanted to close on this slide as a reminder for why we're pursuing this, and that it's really critical that we continue to take these actions. And these codes are now, as I mentioned, in their third year of review and revisions. So they've been very well vetted by the community, staff, this committee. And there's always the potential for improvement, but staff do feel that this is a good starting point. And as mentioned, that we'll have opportunities to reevaluate and revise. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
I'll just start off with one. So our primary remit is the climate action plan. And I saw there was one line in there that these measures are going to be supportive of the town's goals. But what is your opinion about the effect of these relative to the climate action plan goals? Do you have, has there been work as to that we can help people, help the town understand how much this is actually advancing us towards our goals?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the best analysis in terms of actual reduction that we have now is on this slide, on the individual house basis of the greenhouse gas reductions from the business as usual. And I would say it's an incremental approach. We're estimating about 30 projects a year. We'll obviously be tracking that closely and seeing what the actual impact is. But it's definitely aligned with some of the actions in our climate action plan, although we have gone beyond those in some cases, especially as it relates to building codes.
And then the other comment in your plan that you didn't represent here was that the uptake of EVs is happening faster than had been projected, right?
Yeah, I think Martin just had a good article on that. We're at 40%.
Yeah. County's at 40% and new vehicle adoption, yes.
Okay, so who's gonna start off with questions? Or do we go to public first?
Committee questions and then public comment and then discussion.
Yep. Who's gonna?
I had a couple questions. I was just curious on the EV portion of this, on the commercial side, on residential. How often do parking lots get resurfaced?
There's no data. There isn't any type of data kept for those items, but I can say that I personally have only seen a very, very, very small number, less than counting on one hand.
Yeah.
But, well, and because as a result of that, what it means in my mind is that there should be more of it coming up soon, because asphalt doesn't last forever. They do slurry coat it, they do slurry seal often, but that's different from an entire.
Probably the last big project that wasn't still new construction, but it was out in the village parking lot, the RH building,
Yeah.
certainly the new facility, but it also reconfigured the entire parking around that area associated with the village. We obviously have new construction as well, but that is going for commercial, which would be, I imagine, they're triggered, but this would trigger as well, like the Evergreen Hotel conference. But yeah, it's kind of rare where you just have a commercial building that's actually just taking up and reconfiguring the parking lot without some major renovation going on to the building.
And with that said, I would have to say that the Collier Association, they are very progressive, in my opinion, and very future forward.
It's a town center.
I could see them simply, even if they weren't redoing a parking lot, they would have some EV parking facilities designed in because there's a demand.
Yeah.
And they want to capture those consumers. So they're very progressive in that, and I'm only going off of, that's not direct from them. That's my observation of their management style. And their leadership there.
Do they have it now?
Uh,
When you go there,
The Rivian chargers are.
The reason I was asking was, and unless I was reading it incorrectly, is that to tear up and only do 20% with a 40% number that Martin just quoted seems short-sighted.
Well, 40%.
40% new.
Or new, yeah.
No, I mean, which is still small. It's still
We're at
small.
11%.
11% up from like 7%.
The population is 11%.
For Corte Madera.
Yes.
Yeah, up from like 7%. 2
Yeah,
years.
but 9% a year ago.
Yeah, it just 20% just feels low, considering it doesn't happen very often. Just a comment.
Anyone else? What was that?
but isn't it 40%? We have to wire for 40% of only install 20% of the spaces. Is that right?
For then, so the non-residential is in the intervening base code. So we didn't make any modifications to that. But it is approximately 20%. 20% conduit and then 5% charging stations.
So conduit is a new one.
It doesn't. Yeah, 5%, we already have 10%.
Commercial managers are reading the same statistics we do. And
Yeah.
can tell that Marin's gonna have more electric vehicles, and if you're gonna have a shopping center here, you should accommodate them. Probably. Or, I mean, no one asked Rivian to do this, right? It's a position.
Any other questions or comments, Leslie?
Just to follow on what Amy said, is dropping it from 50% to 20% seems short-sighted.
So the 50% was conduit only.
Right.
And so the reason that was in the original code was to actually incentivize people to do 20% conduit and 5% chargers. And the feedback that we heard from the community was, no, every project should be required to install at least some charging stations.
So it was either 50% conduit. In this case, we got 5% chargers plus the 20% conduit.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the minimum, that's been the minimum for a while, across the state. And I'll say this as a contract, I know that it's very, very cost prohibitive. However, there are programs out there and there's manufacturers out there that will supply the chargers. And now I might be speaking out of turn, but there are manufacturers out there that will supply chargers, the chargers for free, and they'll take a percentage of the proceeds.
Yeah.
So, and people are trying to take advantage of that situation and I have to say that the commercial sites, they are very, they're aware of the situation and they want to try to accommodate the EV chargers, but it's very, very, very cost prohibitive. I could say that the electrical conductors alone, just the wiring alone in the last 4 years has probably gone up about 250%, which is massive. And that's,
I want to bring up something.
Copper hit a record high yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was
I want
strong
to
copper.
bring up something that Pat brought up in a meeting is that, you know, we're making all these requirements when in fact, well, two things. One, we don't really know where this recharging technology is going. One observation I had from talking with the college basketball was that people want to charge at home. That's the only reliable station they know of. They can get there, so they want their home chargers. So going out to commercials, you know, is it going to be gas stations in 20 years? They're going to have half-an-hour chargers, or are we going to, you know, rely on shopping centers? So we're still in the, you know, infant stage of the industry. So it's, you know, yes, I can see being prepared for it, but on the other hand, we're not really sure what we'll prepare it for. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe it is a good thing to go.
There's a hand
slow.
up there.
Yeah,
you've had your hand raised patiently. Thank
please
you.
go, yeah.
Well, thank you, Karen. You just made one of my points. So that's exactly right, which is it's still early days here on the charging stuff. And there's a big push towards fast charging for obvious reasons. And so we might need a lot fewer chargers 10 or 15 or 20 years from now. So forcing a lot of cost today might not be, you know, the most efficient use of everybody's time and energy and money. Having said that, obviously in the short term, we don't have sufficient charging capacity. So I think we probably found as good a balance as we can with a finger in the air. It's very hard to predict these things, but it feels like requiring some actual chargers installed now is good, but forcing people to do too much is probably going to end up with wasted money in the end of the day. I have a comment and a question on the residential requirement, and Phoebe touched on this briefly, but I'm very much supportive of this as a first step here. But as we look at the next round of these recommendations or requirements and potentially subsequent ones, it would be great to capture more projects in the net, but lower the burden on people to do them. And so if you could have some cheaper options or maybe a more flexible point system that would allow people, you know, if you're doing a 500-foot renovation, you'll have to score 3 points, and you could do that through re-insulating some of your walls, but not all of them. I think, for instance, the insulation requirement, if I understand it, is for all of your walls, which is a big deal. You might then trigger some other requirements from the building code if you had to, you know, touch all of your walls in a renovation. So as a sort of principle, I think capturing a higher percentage of renovations in the town, but making it much easier for people to comply would be good, both from an education point of view and also, you know, kind of muscle memory, as well as actually touching more of the homes as we try to, you know, push the progress here. And I had a couple of ideas, which Phoebe mentioned a couple of them, but you know, on-demand hot water heaters, space heaters. I mean, these are very cost effective, particularly as we're trying to get middle and lower income houses to comply with this and not sort of dodge the permitting requirements. I think making it easier for people to comply would be in everybody's interest. The question I had, which Phoebe, I'd mentioned to you before, I don't know if you've had a chance to look into this, but it seems that we're at some point, some of these rules require people to make changes to their panel. And my experience with PG&E was that as soon as we made a change to our panel, we were then, because of the vintage of our house, required to move our panel, which turned out to be quite an expensive undertaking. So I'm just wondering, have we checked to make sure that we're not inadvertently triggering some other requirement vis-a-vis PG&E or some other regulation that is going to make this sort of cost even more onerous for the homeowner?
Yeah, good question, Pat. And I did go through the codes again to make sure that we're not requiring panel upgrades in any of these cases. So for all the projects, it's when the panel upgrade is already in the scope that there's a requirement. Except for the laundry room and kitchen remodels, if they're involved in a project of 750 square foot or more. And the panel requirement there is to either upgrade the panel or provide load calculations showing how the existing panel can provide electricity for electric appliances in the future. So the goal there is not to force people to upgrade their panel when it's not part of the project, but it is to have them think through it and using some of the resources that Tom shared at our last meeting, demonstrate that they're thinking through how their existing panel can power electric appliances.
Okay. And this might be an edge case, but the specific, in our case, I think it's not uncommon, was that our gas riser was too close to our electrical panel. And PG&E's requirement is if you do anything to your panel, you then have to move the panel so that it's, I think, either 3 or 6 feet laterally from the gas riser, and that turned out to cost $5,000. So I just want to make sure we're not somehow forcing someone into that and say, oh, you're going to put a new stove in, you have to upgrade your panel, and when you upgrade your panel, by the way, you're going to have to move it. So now your $3,000 stove became a $10,000 stove or whatever. But we can't, I know we can't avoid all of these things, but I just want to make sure we're not running afoul of something that's easily avoided.
Pat, did you end up keeping your gas line?
It was this was when we were installing solar, and we were able to work something out with the solar installer, basically cut us a break on moving the panel. So we were able to stomach it at the end of the day, but it was this unpleasant surprise to find out that we actually had to move our panel in addition to upgrading it.
Yeah. There's been great work by Bill Green and Spur on panels, and I let Tom give us some great input. But Bernie, are you tracking this?
By tracking, can you?
There's a tremendous amount of work being done to study, to reach the goal of reducing the number of times that panels get upgraded, so that the upstream effect of infrastructure doesn't happen. And Bill Green and Spur have been publishing some great work on that. And then we saw a presentation back in March of rationalizations for engineered rationalizations for not upgrading a panel, where a very strict code read would say that you would need to upgrade it, but then rationalization, given diversity and other electrical terms that I don't completely understand, would mean that you would evidence that you don't really have to.
Those are a lot of talking points, but to answer, to try to answer some of them directly and indirectly.
Okay.
So we're not tracking that, and that isn't something that we have done, and I don't think that we would do, but to try to clear up a few of those points. The good news is that sometimes there's a small percentage of those electrical panels that need to be upgraded, and the homeowners insurance companies won't renew the insurance until they upgrade their panel, because they have older 100 amp Zinsco or Federal Pacific panels. So luckily, fortunately for us and the homeowner, they're forced to upgrade their panel, but through insurance. So insurance will cover that. So we're off the hook for being the bad person there. So the other part of a new panel upgrade is the burden, and would have a burden on the homeowner, perhaps when they do a solar installation, and that's more typical and common. When they do a solar installation, most of the time there's 100 or 125 amp electrical service that's it's inadequate for the solar generation. And so they're forced to do a couple different things. One is to upgrade the panel. Sometimes they're fortunate enough to be 3 feet away, a minimum of 3 feet away from the gas riser. So they're golden. Other times there's a small percentage that are too close to the gas riser. So they can have an option of doing a couple things. Leave the panel as is and install a sub panel. And that's sometimes they're fortunate enough to be able to do a sub panel. Other
That's
times.
what we did.
Other times, what they may have to do is simply, now, if it's overhead service, if it's overhead, they got off, in my opinion, that was the best of what they could have hoped for, to have overhead service vice underground service. So PG&E can easily swing a line, and change the service conductors. So unfortunately, the state of California and the jurisdiction does not enforce the PG&E Green Book rules and regulations. So we get to quote unquote blame it on PG&E, as we do everything. But that still doesn't relieve the homeowner from the expense of relocating an electrical panel. There are solutions out there, sub panels. There's a large portion also, and I'm going to say a larger portion, they willingly and wantingly will upgrade their service panel, and it's part of their renovation because they're adding so much of an electrical demand to their renovation. They must upgrade their electrical service panel. So they absorb those costs willingly and wantingly because they know upfront in advance that those fees and costs associated with doing that, it's part of their renovation, and they want that new master bathroom and the new master bedroom. So they are going to absorb those costs as a matter of fact. There are a handful, there's a fair percentage of people that are caught off guard with the panel upgrades, and it's quite financially burdening. We don't force that to happen. Luckily, we don't force that to happen. That panel upgrade is usually happening for a couple different reasons. One, their panel fails and they must upgrade it. Sometimes insurance company will cover that. Most of the time it won't, but sometimes it's a win-win. They get to upgrade the panel and they don't have to relocate it very far, and the costs are at a minimum. But there's no real way of tracking who upgraded it and what the extra additional cost was. We just don't track that. But we are very cognizant that every time we look at a set of plans, and it's the load calcs either say you don't have enough power in your existing electrical panel to do your kitchen remodel. Therefore, you must increase your electrical panel or upgrade your panel. And that's one of the things. Forego the brand new kitchen that I've been wanting for 12 years, or don't do the new kitchen because it's going to cost an extra $5,000 for the panel. Well, it's a done deal. There's a new panel, there's a new kitchen. It's just, they're absorbing the cost. We do have a small percentage and of the low income that it's financially burdening. So maybe we don't impose those, them to change it, but how do we assist them with that? Are there loans, grants, from the state, from PG&E? I don't know. So maybe we can investigate that.
Were you thinking of, like the switch that lets you, either charge your car or run your stove, for example? I mean, is that what we're talking about?
Transfer switch.
Transfer switch. Is that, and I've seen that they've got some that they're getting more and more intelligent. Do these requirements allow for that? Because that could avoid having to upgrade it.
That's on the cutting edge right now, and that's one of the new futuristic, it sounds futuristic and it is futuristic, but that's where we're going. That's where it's going to go. And that's with some of the new technology that we're in the infancy right now, that we're at the tip of the iceberg, and everybody, well, that's what people are going to do. They're going to plug in their car, their vehicle, so they can run their house at night. And that, all of that, those electrical upgrades, it's available. But it hasn't hit the market like it will. But that's a whole nother realm that we haven't been exposed to yet. But that's,
Well, and you can charge your car when you're not cooking. That's. That doesn't.
Yeah,
require
I wasn't being specific about what,
oh,
any technology.
yeah, I wasn't being specific about the technology. I was just hoping that people would be able to take into consideration a justification, and it sounds like Andrew's.
So Dave, I'll take as a follow-up item
Yeah.
to share some more resources with Bernie on that
Okay.
topic and what Tom has shared with us as well.
Yeah. I think if we all benefit from those, it'd be great.
We have that, that's recorded, right? Tom's presentation.
Yeah.
Yes, we did why.
and I have not seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's got some of the George Jetson stuff in it.
We're at the very beginning.
Yeah.
Jetson's coming.
Phil, you've been quiet.
No, that's what I was thinking. I don't know why we're just at the beginning of that. If it's, I mean, I've done similar things on construction I've undertaken where you switch a load to something else, you know, and the defaults, you can't run your range and your dryer at the same time. And you can do that with 100 amp.
You can,
Do a
absolutely,
lot.
you can.
It
I'm
seems
not
like
saying it's
another,
not possible, it's absolutely possible right now, and it does exist right now. It just doesn't, it's not being utilized by the masses yet, but it will be.
Does the code allow it?
Yeah.
The code hasn't caught up to that yet.
Well,
That's why we need creativity.
That's, thank you, yes.
and public education, I mean, that's a, you know, we didn't know about this, most of us didn't know about it until we heard those alternatives presented. And the public, as you said, you know, we need to be leading the public as opposed to waiting for them to demand or ask. I think that education piece is, you know, here's an alternative. Here's a way to solve the problem. Here's a way to be creative. I think that's a
Well, and it's,
for us to be exploring.
we're talking about 30 projects, but when you, if the more homes that upgrade to bigger panels, the more the grid has to be designed to accommodate those bigger panels. And that's that upstream effect that I was talking about. So if we can all be smart about what the grid sees, there's less of a problem with congestion on the grid or oversizing the infrastructure. So there's lots of benefits that come out of being smart. Any other questions?
I just had a quick question, sorry, just about the 750, what other jurisdiction?
Yeah, I had the same question.
I was just curious what other I think we talked about this last time, what they're saying.
Yeah, I think,
Who's going to 500?
same.
That's 750 first, let's bet.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I pull that up because I also
can be a
forget
follow-up
which
too.
jurisdictions have adopted this.
It was more curious maybe than anything else.
Yeah, well, I can say, okay, so the Marin County, Fairfax, Tiburon, and San Anselmo have all adopted the single family renovations reach code. Fairfax, I believe, went down to 200.
Wow.
Or 250 possibly, because
It was more.
they have smaller renovation projects. San Rafael is also considering adopting this code currently, and they are considering reducing to 500. And everyone else is stuck with this. And San Rafael is also, they're lowering the threshold, but they're also lowering the target scores
Oh, interesting.
For the smaller.
for all projects.
I'll say that, for the industry, matching county and being aligned with other towns makes it a lot easier for contractors and for the public. So they don't stumble, trip over something.
No, well, not all, do I have this correctly? Not everyone has the vintages, is that correct?
And that's correct. San Rafael is also
So
banning the.
we're different no matter what, you know, because the vintages have different scores, so There's some alignment, some differences, you know.
But I wasn't gonna complain about that because I think it's even more, I think we're going above and beyond what the county requires, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We need to get off of fossil fuel.
Yes, I'm just saying, if a contractor comes in, they need to learn, well, according to your husband,
Yeah.
not just.
I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think simplistically, if you add an electrical load to something, that's what you ought to be measured, not the square footage. So, you know, you can do a 300 square foot addition, you know, and load it up with goodies.
Kilowatts, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I would think any project that increased electrical demand would be subject to some kind of mitigation.
And that is the case, right? If your panel load increases, but your square footage is less than 300, if you trigger the need for a panel upgrade, you still have to do a panel.
You still have to do a panel upgrade.
Yeah. But the 750 is trying to create a threshold to get the housing stock ready to go electric.
I would say that in my opinion, I would say that we get more electrical panel upgrades willingly because they're doing a kitchen or bathroom remodel, or they're adding a bathroom. So it just happens organically and naturally that we're getting a new panel upgrade with their project. Now, sometimes they may not have all of the facts and figures, and especially the dollar amount correct in the beginning. They're very quickly brought up to date with what the actual numbers are to do that panel upgrade. And at that point, they usually it's just part of the scope of work. It's just part of having to get their project done.
Yeah, I mean,
My understanding is that the codes are really good based on energy conservation, and they're all, it's just happened to include my application.
So it talks about installation as well,
Yeah.
for example. So the building code is focused on people doing big stuff. We're talking about having a postcard for people to upgrade, you know, when they're changing out a water heater. You know, maybe that's a different way to look at things. We don't want something to stand in the way of someone doing that because they might have to have a panel upgrade or something. And that's where a switching technology might help. Make that happen, because every gas water heater that we replace is another, 15 years less of greenhouse gas emissions, from that source. Otherwise, they'll just buy another gas water heater. And that's what we want to do.
Any other comments on the specific code language? No, are there public comments?
I'm not seeing any email public comments or attendees online wishing to comment.
Okay.
We're such a popular committee.
Audience members today.
Any questions or comments?
My only question was about the jurisdiction that was adopted in 750, so I don't have anything.
Yeah.
I think there was a word that I wasn't sure what it was. It was something to do with like something that was being implemented early on, but I don't remember what it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Bernie, we have student ambassadors that also are very active within their school on ecological and climate issues. And this is part of our outreach.
It's very commendable. I applaud you for being here and taking part too. That's a big move.
Oh, conduit.
Conduit.
Pipe.
Conduit is a pipe, a PVC or some type of a poly pipe. So it's just conduit that it's just a pipe that gets laid in the ground and buried, and it holds the electrical wire conductors inside.
Okay.
and you can pull the wire through it later. So the idea is it's just a preparatory.
The big deal is getting the pipe in the ground. That's,
when they. And then, so, and then the other word we use is conductor, that's the wire. Okay,
Sorry, I have a hard time calling it wiring, and it's electrical conductors. It's the wiring.
Well, I appreciate you making that connection for wiring.
It's all wired.
obviously,
I didn't know.
I'm sorry, did I miss a question? Sorry.
No, I was just saying thank you for calling out conductor and wiring because that maybe something I missed.
And thank you for the conduit question. They also call that a raceway. A raceway meaning that it's the raceway for the conductors to go through.
The wiring. The wiring.
The wire. No, don't tell me what the wiring is. My students would call me on that. Because I call on it.
okay, so, any other discussion items on this? Okay, I think that we should move this along to, council and and I hope that they adopt it as well, so, can I get a motion?
specifically to
To adopt it as.
adopt it as suggested by staff.
Yeah, I think that the motion would be something like, that we, recommend, that as a committee, we recommend that council adopt this and work with staff to change the code. Or for the time.
I would also like to add, I mean, I think this is appropriate, with the caveat that we look at it to see, you know, like then maybe what is it, 2025 or whenever, to see how it's working, then to adjust it as the.
So,
In other words, I think it's a really good start.
Yeah.
Let's just keep an eye on it, like, you know, maybe to adopt smaller, some of the other comments people have made.
yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about the 2025 cycle is coming up so quickly.
Mhm.
We are halfway through this
Yeah,
triennial cycle, so, pretty soon we'll be talking about those changes.
right, all the way over. Yeah.
Um,
Is it worth mentioning that or is that implicit?
I think that staff will do that.
Listen,
I think it's implicit also. That's Phoebe's, that's yours.
that's what Tim's gonna
Yeah,
do.
Yeah.
we'll definitely bring that to town council, when this item goes to them.
Okay.
Yeah, Karen, part of I guess part A is, you know, there's another code cycle coming up.
Right.
Part B is, we can't just continue to kick the can down the road and
That's
wait.
correct. Yeah.
Let's get these
Let's
things
get it
done.
done. I agree. I was just saying, you know, the purpose of adopting it is to see how it works. It's part of
Why don't you try to make a motion?
it. Yes, let's do it.
What motion would you like?
Yeah, the motion to adopt along with evaluating how it works.
Okay,
By 2025.
sounds good. Do I have a second? I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That was an aye.
Yes,
Those opposed say nay. Okay, it's passed.
Unanimous.
Let's get this going.
That's a unanimous support. That's
That's it.
Yeah, thank you.
Um,
And if I might add one other comment, if you don't mind, please, that I haven't reviewed the new 2025 electrical codes yet, but as soon as I get my code book, that'll be my riveting reading for the evening. Really? And I imagine that those values and those numbers and figures are going up in the energy code, as they will. That's my opinion, and they probably will for the electrical code and for the energy code and the Calgary. Those numbers will increase, and I know I was informed of that from a member of the Energy Commission that we had a side conversation. He also teaches at BBC, and he said numbers are going up, figures are going up, so so it'll get better for us.
yeah, I think that these are sticks. I think as where the town can, where staff can introduce carrots as well. The goal is to get people off of fossil fuel. And how can we help that happen faster? That's what we're.
Bernie, can you just clarify, you said the numbers are going up, which numbers, do you mean the points requirement, or were you referring to something else?
not the points requirement, but just the requirements for EV charging capabilities,
Per percentage.
the percentages.
Got it. Okay.
And I just want, I know I keep clarifying this, but I think, and it's my understanding, that maybe our goal, climate action, is to get rid of fossil fuels. I think the REACH code is to get the overall energy requirements down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and we're sort of working in concert now, but
They aren't exactly the
they
same.
aren't exactly the same.
Okay.
What's next?
Thank you. We're discussion of the outreach, plan for heat pump water heaters. And how we can get those, noisy things to be acceptable in side yards. Is that what?
We weren't gonna phrase it that way.
Updated, sir.
That's not the agenda.
I was making a joke, but we do want to talk to you about that.
That would happily.
Yeah, great.
Leslie, would you?
Oh, well,
Your post-
sure. With Karen and Patrick and with you, there's discussion over the last several months and with this group to do a postcard, to do outreach around water heaters. And I either raised my hand or wasn't paying attention and someone said, Tag, you're it. But I took it on myself to do a draft that would be, hopefully acceptable to everybody. I chose to use humor and focus on health and money, because I think that that's where most people relate. Trying to get a fair amount of information, but looking at other examples of the town's postcards, an awful lot of time. There is a lot of information. So you kind of, how do you get people to look at what ended up in their mailbox? Which is, part of the reason why I think humor works sometimes better. So yeah, this is just for your consideration and discussion. I don't know, there it is, so the whole world can see it. There were two versions of that image, and then the other side is just sort of the mailer side. And anyway, so yeah, and Karen had some other ideas about, an approach that was using the pie chart, which is another approach. And I'll let Karen talk about that.
Yeah, so when I looked at this postcard, I think there are two approaches, and I'm not quite sure which. It really depends on the purpose of the postcard. Because I think this, it's like this combines the incentive for heat pump water heaters, which is really one side, with electrification and just a lot of information. If you look at the next slide, I didn't put it in any great format. I'm going.
There's another one.
Yeah, I thought, let's keep going. Well, anyway, it's just text. I think you had it in, can you get it on?
Yeah.
Okay, I just had, just like 5 key points, save money and help
Yeah,
Corte
there it
Madera's environment,
You also have the image though.
Yeah, I do, but
Yeah,
this
there
will be
we
on
go,
one
there we
side,
go,
and
yeah.
then just look at this, and this just can show you, okay, water heating is really the source of greenhouse gas. So it's really just a few key points on one side. Here's where you can get the, go to where the rebates are, maybe put on that same QR code for more information, really focusing in on just water heaters. So it sort of depends on how we want to use these postcards. Do we want to just say, okay, we're focusing on our one task of getting these water heaters out, or do we want to make it an opportunity for a lot more? People probably know more about response to postcards than I do, but for me, I guess that's sort of from a corporate background, you keep it very simple and hope that they digest it. Maybe someone, gets a picture in the mail and they want to read it. I don't know. So these are the two approaches that we sort of came up with.
Can I ask before we dig in? Can we test, can we run both of them? Like, is that cost prohibitive to run 2 runs of the postcard?
But they have the same messaging. Confusing.
Well, I'm just saying that you could send,
A/B testing is a
yeah,
good idea.
like, you could see which one is resonating. And that you could check the QR code, right? I don't know.
Yeah, we could send half in one approach and half in the other approach. And
It might be cost prohibitive to do it.
it's a crying question. It's not a mailing question.
That's true.
Does somebody have any background in, okay, what do people, is simpler better, or is this like our one opportunity to get some education out there, or what's the thought?
Again, you're right. It depends on what you're trying to do, right? I think that different people respond differently, right? And it's really hard to know. I think that's why an A/B test is a really good idea. Thank you for mentioning that, bringing that up. I would say that most people, like, we're wonky. We're the people that are in the weeds and we know all these details.
Yeah.
The rest of the public, right? And so are they going to respond to a pie chart that says help Corte Madera reduce our greenhouse gas? Do they? I don't know. I mean, that's why a test would be good. Is it about the community or is it about you and your family,
Well,
right?
Yeah, the flip side was, you save money, and I think that's what I got from Sebastopol, is make that the main.
Right.
Save
And
money
help.
and help the environment. The first one is, oh my God, this is
Or-
the direction.
Another suggestion is we plan for this not being the one and only postcard we
Right.
do.
Right.
We're kind of introducing a communication method here from this committee on these topics. I think, I personally, I think that the dirty kid's face is a little bit more appealing than a pie chart. More, I predict it's gonna be more,
Well, the first thing is to get it not thrown away.
yes, yeah.
That's the most important thing. Because people just go through the mail and throw all the junk mail away. And you look at this thing and the face works.
And so the QR, the data side and the QR code is gonna take people somewhere. And if they wanna go, I think people are pretty comfortable with QR code.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, this is a draft. I mean, all of us were working on this is a draft. So with, I have no,
I don't know if the more simple text would end up being less wordy.
yeah, I always need an editor.
Yeah, but I think that being less wordy and more to the point might be better. I kind of like the humor or the,
We can work on sort of.
What about having the
Make
pie
it
chart
simpler.
on the backside? Because for me personally, the pie chart was like in your face, wow, bang, there it is. That's a huge.
The thing, the dirty face to me I don't associate that with water heaters.
But it's hot water. You've got to watch this. Read this, right?
I know, but the picture doesn't say it to me.
Well, okay, so the picture, again, I pulled it off the internet.
It's
So
attention.
it's a draft, right?
Yeah.
Attention.
Just, it's something that I just found out and thought, well, that's amusing.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just amusing. It's like, oh yeah, we need hot water because my kid is filthy.
Can I
But-
comment? Sorry,
Pat,
I don't want to interrupt if you're still going, Leslie.
no, go.
Okay, sorry, it's a little hard to tell. For context, I guess to remind us of what the impetus of this was, that early in the year, there were very substantial incentives for putting in a heat pump hot water heater. And so we thought, let's quickly get a simple message out that tells people to get on it while the incentives are still there. In the meantime, one of the key incentives was exhausted and now I think partially reinstated, which was the Tech Clean California. But aside from that, there's still very good incentives for heat pump hot water heaters. So the $2,000 tax credit from the IRA, there's 2 or 3 others, which could still cover up to half of the cost of a new water heater. So it's significant. I think what we ought to decide is whether we want to stick with that original intent of promoting specifically heat pump hot water heaters, or whether we want to talk more generally about other appliances, which this this does get at. So we may, there may be a move to kind of revisit the intent, but originally it was, let's do it fast because the incentives are not going to last forever. Let's keep it really simple and just get something out. And, we're now in, almost into June. So I think we should maybe think for a minute, are we trying to promote electrification more broadly? Or are we trying to say, think about, as Leslie rightly says, make a plan for when your hot water heater fails, learn about it, and here are some incentives that are available. So if your water heater is 10 or 15 years old, like ours was, you might just want to go ahead and proactively do it now. But I think we should decide if we still want to push specifically hot water heaters, or are we trying to make a point more broadly about electrification?
And I was trying to walk the line between being very specific. I mean, the water heater, if you don't get that we're talking about water heaters, then, you're something is missing. But it is, when you say if your appliances are aging, make a plan with a headline about water heaters. I mean, it just sort of, I was hoping that would tie the two challenges that we're trying to deal with together. And maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. But that was the thinking behind it.
For me, let me propose this. There is so much that can happen, and it's in the, that we need to promote. There's conservation, there's electrification, there's the vehicles, et cetera. And the one thing we're trying to get out here are the electric heat pump water heaters. So I would focus on just that message. We have tons of information, you have your handouts, we have the website, we have this, we have that. And you could even put a QR code for, additional resources on full electrification. But I think in this communication, something simple, something targeted towards the electric, the water heaters, just that one message. And we're trying to see if we can reach people via postcards. And that's actually a lot less, that replacement is less onerous than other, spacing, et cetera. Just see if this has an impact. So I'll propose, we have a lot more humor and catchiness, but maybe I could propose some blend where it's edited a little simpler, uses your humor, uses your illustrations, but focuses it maybe more on just heat pumps and the incentives.
I would actually say that, sure, sure. And I think Amy's suggestion could help us all to do an A/B test so that half of the postcards are one version and the other half go out in another version. It's the same cost essentially. And that gives us the information about, because we can do two different QR codes, right? So that we know whether it was A or B. And that allows us to track what people responded to. They don't have to be dramatically different, but I think that's a really good idea. I would support that 100%. I don't have any vested interest in one version or another. Again, it's a draft, and do with it what you will.
You're just thinking it would be fun. It would be interesting to test two different approaches of a more general go towards electrification versus something very targeted.
Yeah, I never thought of this as just electrify your home. I was seeing it. I thought that there was enough messaging around it that it was about water heaters, but because the rebates come and go, we want people to make a plan for all of it, right? We want them to be thinking about all of the appliances, including furnaces that we're not talking about, but we will, right? It's like, start with a plan of what's going to break down first, right? What you need to replace first is without, overloading people with cost and issues. And it's like, just make a plan, figure out where you're going to start and move through it that way. And if the first thing to go is your furnace, you've got a plan for what furnace you want to replace it with. If it's your water heater, what we're visually, and I think also with the language, this is about water heaters. I think that the danger of talking too much about rebates is that they come and go, they change. We can say, go to this website to see what the latest and greatest is. And if it's zeroed out, they're gonna go, great, thank you very much for that helpful hint. So I just, as you've said several times, there's a lot of things happening. It's moving quickly and we don't quite know where it's going to end up. So there's that weaving that.
But I think what you're saying is instead of, you know, as Pat said, the original quote marketing plan was targeted towards water heaters, and you're really saying, hey, actually it should really be the plan. So I think we need to decide the overall message before we decide how we want to draft it.
Sure.
Part of this also was, you know, I know Phoebe mentioned that it's gonna be a while before the town gets around to updating their fee schedule. And I just wanted to jump on this again, that we thought it might be, good support from the town because they're not collecting a lot of fees for water heater replacements anyway. That we can say, you know, you can run a wire and the town will give you a free permit. And you said we haven't reviewed our fee schedule yet. And I said, well, this doesn't have to be part of the fee schedule if there's no fee.
But yeah, but I think you said that's a long process. I want to get, I know Pat was, the marketing group had decided what step one was, and Pat, maybe you can refresh my memory. What was step one that we were trying to accomplish with the postcards?
Can I make a suggestion?
Yeah.
A few minutes left. Maybe we should just decide, because I think what I'm hearing is we're still trying to figure out if we're going water heater or full electrification, right?
Right, or make.
And what I would say is like, let's not over index, like, let's not overthink this, because we're gonna be really lucky if, you know, a small percent hit the QR code, because it's just the nature of marketing, right? So if this is our first try and test, maybe do another, I don't know what the budget looks like, but like, it's about repetition more than anything. So
I guess I would, yeah.
Just to, Karen,
Yeah.
so how many homes in Corte Madera? How many post op boxes does this have to go up to?
It's 3,500, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's,
4,000.
yeah, I can't remember, a couple thousand.
Fewer than
So it depends, are we going to all apartment? It's probably not, no, just property managers. So if we exclude the multifamily, it's probably less, yes.
2,000, 20, I thought it was 2,500
That
somewhere
sounds
there.
about right.
Yeah.
It's about, we have a third of our units are rentals and we have about a little over 4,000, I think, total. It's divided by 10, 4,000 and 4,000.
So
Okay,
homeowners, that's a homeowner.
But no, there's so 11 units.
I just think you need to decide your primary message before we do anything.
Yeah, I agree, but I mean, I think if we could settle on that before
Yeah.
end of the meeting, I think that's a good thing.
Okay.
Phoebe, do you think we'll have budget to do a couple of these in next year?
What are we looking at?
Looking it up.
Yeah, sure. Make it count. Come on.
Yeah. If you get 50% of the people to cut, you know.
Look, I mean, we should probably, maybe that's something we could talk about if there's like a 2 postcards a year type of need, if that's what the community, you know, the community really thinks is the schedule that we should be putting stuff out like that, you know, it'd just be helpful from a budgetary standpoint to start to plan for what
Yeah,
those costs
Who knew
you
how
know, on
much
a
it
yearly
cost?
basis, and we just come up with it, but
We should say like
I thought it was 3,000.
Is it 3,000 a shot?
a lot.
Yeah,
So-
I would say it would be good to be intentional with what the message is, and not ruling out the possibility of sending out an additional mailer, but just thinking of the time and effort it's gonna take to refine just one mailer, take that into consideration.
Okay, should we agree on the overall message of it? The focus, rather.
I'll start on that. I really think that focusing on hot water heaters, and then, having access to other information and deeper information through a QR code or something, is good. It's, I thought that was a really strong message rather than electrification more broadly, because it's gonna be hard to fit that onto a postcard. Keep it simple.
I think we had talked about that and agreed on that. We thought that was the best way.
That's my preference. But although I think at a different time, we could focus it more broadly.
And Pat,
Yeah, I haven't changed my original view, which was we should focus it just on hot water heaters. I mean, also looking at this chart reinforces why. So it's, you know, it's outside of transport, it's the biggest emitter, it's actionable. Everybody's gonna have to replace one sooner or later, even if you don't have to do it now. You're learning about it, and actually there are good incentives right now. We don't have to list them, but we can point people to them. Some come and go, and some are more long-term. So yeah, I would keep it simple, focus on water heaters, maybe mention more broadly electrification as, you know, one small point, but I think we just want something that people can absorb quickly, and if it's relevant for them this year, they might do something about it, and that would be a win.
And Pat brought up expedience, so I'm wondering if we could just move this to you two to work towards a final to submit to staff to go to print. And not have to come
Yeah.
bring it up.
So on that point, because I'm hearing, I'm looking at, you know, sort of the two sides here. The electrifying news, the mailer side, are we thinking here, putting the pie chart there and really changing the language, not electrify your home, but make it more visual. And then something of it, just keeping kind of the water heater message on the other side.
Yeah.
So we've got data on one side, a happy, pretty, colorful pie chart with, you know, quick line, and then a little more about water heaters on the other side. Okay.
And then
Dirty kid.
and the
Yeah,
last.
everybody likes the dirty.
Compromise.
There we go.
Celebration.
Yeah, you say it to me, but it's funny, so, okay, well,
Yeah.
if that works, that works.
We do have a few other bits of business here.
Oh,
So
okay.
a discussion of potential committee participation at the 4th of July event. I'm gonna move off the card because I think we've got what we need, right?
Yeah.
Who put this on?
I did.
You,
I just wondered if the committee wants to participate in the 4th of July event like we did last year. And if so,
Did we last year? We just had a table.
Yeah, we
We weren't in the parade.
or did I say parade?
Would you, okay, so, and I heard that was one of the more successful ones, right? The people really came up, is that a real participation? And
We were by the food.
I think.
Location.
Like the
Yeah, we were by
message.
the Lions Beer.
Yeah, and you had a good handout that people like, that kind of thing?
Well, it's a family event, right? So
And the
there were lots of
kids.
kids.
The wheel, right?
Did we get 100 pledges? No. But, did we get 30? Maybe 10 or 20. So I think it's like one of those, us showing up in a community event.
Yes.
So knowing that,
And it didn't take a tremendous amount of planning or coordination.
It's always
Took a
lot
little
of
bit.
schlep and.
did you think it was part of the plan? Yeah, you
You
did.
would, I wonder, of course, it could result in throwing away. I wonder if we had the postcard, we could hand
Yes, I
those out. But I don't, maybe people would just toss it. You know?
No, people don't, it's different than getting in the mailbox and it looks like junk mail or whatever, you're not interested.
Mm.
People usually only take stuff from the table if they want it.
Yeah.
So, you know, and if it's small, they slip it in their bag or their backpack or whatever. So the waste is lower, I would say.
Well, do we have support from staff to help us out at the 4th of July event this year?
Yes, I can't promise attendance, but definitely supporting gather materials.
I can pick up the stuff if you want.
They actually, last year they had tables set up for us already, so
Yeah.
just bringing our tablecloths and flyers and setting up there.
In our tent.
I'm supportive of doing it because I think it's good to be
It's
out there.
fun. It's fun.
And the positioning of the tent is key.
We'll get-
We-
Yeah, put a word.
Deer is really one of the.
Closer to the beer and the dogs. Yeah. So
Next thing
it's
you know,
a-
we'll be on that, but,
We have a bathroom now this year.
And the bathroom.
So who would want to volunteer?
I will volunteer.
Okay, we've got Leslie gonna volunteer.
If I have the raceways done.
The raceway is already done. The raceway's been there 6 weeks already.
Dave's gonna volunteer, Leslie's
Yeah.
volunteering.
Yeah.
Phil, are you in?
Yeah.
Phil's in.
All possible.
Public comment?
I will be there.
Yay!
Oh, I won't.
Oh, you won't?
I'll be in, oh, no, I forget what the state is called, but I'll be in another state. It's a little far in the future,
Yeah.
so I can't promise
Yeah.
attendance right now, but I will try.
Thank you. So I think we have enough guidance on that topic.
Oh, we need to actually, do we need to do anything to apply with Julie or?
And we'll make sure that there's.
Well,
people
yeah,
for the meeting.
Okay,
She lies 2 months away.
Okay.
Yes.
Updates, reports from staff?
I do have an update on the question regarding contractor outreach, but I'll send that out in an email, after this meeting. And I did want to update you briefly on the youth position. Staff are working to add a reserved youth seat on the committee. After we realized that our current municipal code actually did not allow for a youth appointment. So that is moving along and should be going to town council soon, and we should be able to appoint a youth position this year, hopefully.
Yay.
that's cool.
Yeah, be on the next agenda, the conference.
Great.
And thanks for being careful in discovering that little issue in our bylaws or whatever, rules, whatever they are. And thank you.
And thank you for moving quickly. That's pretty quickly to get it all done, so.
And then the other update has already been mentioned, but our next climate action committee meeting should be in the new town hall building.
Yay.
We're hopefully, some of you have started to see the messaging that we're going to be closing for a week to move into that new building, starting opening to the public there on June 3rd. So we're really excited. Our June meeting will be over there.
I would recommend if you can, maybe 15 minutes early just to get familiar with the,
Setup.
yeah, the AV and stuff like that. It'll be pretty self-explanatory. There are some unique aspects to the new dais and with technology and whatnot, so.
Can we get a tour if we come even earlier than 15 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
That would be wonderful. For whatever reason, I think a bunch of us had hoped to be at when everything was still kind of open and torn up.
They gave us a tour.
Yeah, we did.
I know, but I couldn't make
Couldn't
it.
make
I
it.
couldn't make it. I think several people didn't, or maybe
Yes,
everyone
true.
did, but me, I don't know, but I would love to
Yep.
see it all spiffy and finished, and it's
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
exciting
Yes.
for everybody.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one other thing, we might as well promote this as well. If you do get an opportunity to have. Well, I would say recommend go watch the video. Phoebe's other half of her work is on adaptation, and
Oh, yeah.
Phoebe's working really hard on a video that is it's a professionally done video of flood vulnerabilities and this in Marina Village and Mariner Cove and pretty much the east side of town. But it's we have a lot of tools around that I just think is even if you don't live in that area, it's important for all of our community to sort of understand what vulnerabilities are out there. And it's a new way to visualize those risks that I think we're really trying to make that accessible to people. So it's
Is it just on the website?
it's on our website.
Yeah, I'll send out a link to it.
More people that are aware of it, the better. So just.
Maybe that was
Yeah,
very impactful. I was like glued to that video.
great. Glad you flipped there.
Did you point on my house?
Yeah.
You're not the first to go.
But I'm not far behind.
No.
Okay.
We do also have a virtual reality version of that video. So
Oh,
if
exactly.
anyone is interested, you can
That's
book a time with me to come try it out on our VR headsets.
Oh, that's exciting.
Can we have that at the 4th of July?
Yes,
That's a good idea.
that's a great
You have to
idea.
bring, some sanitation wipes,
Yes.
but, yeah,
Obvious.
That's cool.
And so we should say farewell?
Yes, I'm,
Yeah.
yeah.
Should we say goodbye?
you know, that's,
or-
I was gonna do this offline.
Okay,
But, mingling the climate adaptation with the climate action at the 4th of July might be a good idea this year. We didn't do that last time.
Yeah, we have something actually.
Yeah, we can definitely bring that.
Okay, Annie, I'm gonna try to move on. Any other updates, reports from you?
No.
Any committee member updates?
I have several things, but I'll keep it really fast. The mountain play. What does that have to do with us, right? The mountain play is in our watershed. It's up in Cushing Meadow Amphitheater. And it's part of our watershed. It's part of the GGNRA and the state park. And we want to get more people back up going to these wonderful 111 years it's been going on. I'll get you a free pass, Bernie, if you drive all the way over. But ACNO Bay Area is going to have a table. They invited me, sort of taking these, what we're trying to do here regionally. It's all about climate solutions. So they invited me and I thought, well, that's okay. So it's June 2nd, Sunday, June 2nd, Saturday and Sunday, the 8th and 9th of June, and Sunday, the 16th. Getting people out in nature and why we love it here, and this is what we want to protect. And climate change is certainly affecting all of our environment. So I'm excited about that. Kinky Boots is a great production. It's a great show. It's really fun. So that's one announcement, and I'll save the others for another time.
And it's a good thing.
You can take buses up.
Any other update from committee members? No? Okay, any suggestions for future agenda items?
yes, we did have, a presentation, we're very draft for the postcard follow-up.
For our,
And, yeah, so we can have that next month.
okay. Do you want to send that out in advance? If you can,
Yeah.
I always find it's easier if you send it out in advance, because then people can think about it. Anything else? No? Okay, hearing nothing else, I'll adjourn the meeting.